Предварительная повестка дня данного заседания гласит: ситуация в отношении Западной Сахары. Повестка дня утверждается. Совет Безопасности приступает к рассмотрению пункта 2 повестки дня. Я хотел бы обратить внимание членов Совета на документ С-2025-612, в котором содержится доклад Генерального секретаря о ситуации в отношении Западной Сахары. На рассмотрении членов Совета находится документ С-2025-692, в котором содержится текст проекта резолюции, представленного Соединенными Штатами Америки. Совет готов приступить к голосованию по представленному на его рассмотрение проекту резолюции. Я ставлю проект резолюции на голосование. Прошу голосующих за проект резолюции, содержащийся в документе С-2025-692, поднять руку. Против? Воздержавшиеся? За резолюцию проголосовало 11 членов Совета, против ни одного, при 3 воздержаниях. 1 член Совета не участвовал в голосовании. Проект резолюции принимается в качестве резолюции 2797-2025. Сейчас я предоставляю слово тем членам Совета, которые хотели бы выступить с заявлением после голосования. Я представляю слово представителю Соединенных Штатов.
Thank you, Mr. President. The United States welcomes today's historic vote, which seizes upon this unique moment and builds on the momentum for a long, long overdue peace in Western Sahara. We commend Personal Envoy de Mistura and his vital diplomatic efforts and recognize the UN's key role in creating a new era of peace and prosperity for the region. We note also the important role played by MINURSO in supporting the Personal Envoy to achieve a mutually acceptable solution and support its mandate extension through October 2026. We are also thankful for the Council's constructive engagement, and I personally thank everyone here who has engaged in this draft, that we've made a sustained effort, we've made a genuine effort to incorporate everyone's proposals, and they were quite numerous from across the Council. The United States is resolute. President Trump is resolute in his support for peace. We are deeply committed to supporting a mutually acceptable solution in the Western Sahara, and we are deeply committed to resolving this issue, this long-standing issue. We urge all parties to use the coming weeks to come to the table and engage in serious discussions using Morocco's credible and realistic autonomy proposal as the only basis for a just and lasting solution to the dispute. And we believe regional peace is possible this year, and we will make every effort to facilitate progress towards this shared goal of peace and prosperity for the people of Western Sahara. Thank you, Mr. President.
Я благодарю представителя Соединенных Штатов за его выступление. Сейчас предоставляю слово представителю Алжира.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, my country did not participate in the vote on this draft resolution. For the renewal of the United Nations mission, for the organization of a referendum in Western Sahara. Through that absence, and acting fully responsibly, Algeria wanted to illustrate the distance that we put between ourselves and a text which does not faithfully reflect, does not sufficiently reflect the UN doctrine with regard to decolonization. It's the implementation of that doctrine that has made it possible for a number of countries to be represented here amongst us in the United Nations organization. Do we need to even recall this? The final decision on the future cannot, must not belong to anyone other than the people under colonial domination. And in that regard, allow me to quote here President Woodrow Wilson of the United States of America, who stated, and I'll quote this in English,
Peoples are not to be handed about from one sovereignty to another by an international conference or an understanding between rivals and antagonists. National aspiration must be respected. Peoples may now be dominated and governed only by their own consent. Self-determination is not a mere phrase. It is an imperative principle of action. Je vous invite tous.
I would invite you all of you, to think deeply about what was said in that statement. Mr. President, as a neighboring country of the main actors in Western Sahara, Algeria has engaged in good faith and in a constructive spirit in the negotiation of the text that was put forward. And I'd like here, at this meeting, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the penholder, the United States, who, contrary to what happened last year, spared no effort to improve the text and to find a compromise between the parties involved. A compromise which would have been able to bring together all of the members of the Council. Of course, and we recognize this openly, substantial improvements were made to the initial text. First of all, by recalling the fundamental parameters of a just and lasting solution to the conflict in Western Sahara. And then, enshrining the inalienable right of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination. And finally, by engaging the two parties, the Kingdom of Morocco and the Polisario Front, in good faith negotiations without preconditions under the aegis of the United Nations. But unfortunately, the text which was finally submitted still has a number of shortcomings. It is below, I say, the expectations and the legitimate aspirations of the people of Western Sahara, represented by the Polisario Front. This people who, for more than 50 years, have resisted in order to have their own say in their own future. So what is lacking in this text? Although the goal is commonly shared, namely to find a lasting, just, and mutually acceptable solution that would provide the right to the people of Western Sahara to self-determination, the way in which this achieved, let me underscore, the way in which this is to be achieved raises legitimate questions. The complicated framework for the proposed negotiation, which puts one option ahead of others, prevents creativity and the flexibility that are necessary to be deployed in order to reach an agreement freely entered into in accordance with the United Nations doctrine in matters of decolonization. Moreover, this text creates an imbalance between the two parties to the conflict by stressing simply the territorial ambitions of one party and saying nothing about the aspirations of the other party, that party being the Sahrawi people who are demanding their freedom. The proof of this is that this text ignores the proposals of the Polisario Front, which nevertheless were recently passed on to the United Nations Secretary General and to the Security Council, and which were published under document number S/2025/664. They are a party to the conflict, and their opinion must be heard, if not taken into consideration. Finally, this text raises, and here I really want you to tune into what I'm saying, this text raises legal questions, serious, legitimate questions with regard to the legal foundation for the negotiating framework being proposed in order to resolve the Western Saharan conflict.